Hi everybody and welcome to this week's Tune In Tuesday. When we talk about the problems that come with plastic pollution, we usually talk about the ingestion risk, so animals eating plastics, and the entanglement risk, so things getting caught up in plastic waste. And we usually talk about how these problems impact marine life. But considering 80% of the plastic in the ocean comes from land-based sources, I can't help but think that many more terrestrial animals are getting impacted by plastic waste as well. In one of my previous Tune In Tuesdays, we looked at the dog poo bag problem along the coastal path at Porthcothan Bay. This was because one of the baby cows that was living along the coastline there was found dead after eating plastic dog poo bags. So clearly there are some impacts on terrestrial animals. So this week, this is what I'm going to look at, and I actually have some samples of poo in this bucket here from such animals. You're probably wondering at this point why I have a bucket of samples of poo from these animals. That is because in this bucket, and if you could smell it, you'd know exactly what animal it came from. These are from foxes. Now the reason that I have 2 fox poo samples in this bucket is because when I was on 2 previous beach cleans, one at Travone, one at Tregells, I found these along the coastal path while I was looking for plastics. Inside these 2 fox poo samples are actually pieces of plastics, clear evidence that these animals had been eating plastics that were littered. So for this week's Tune In Tuesday, I'm going to be taking apart these 2 poo samples to see what plastics are inside. But first, have a look at the footage of when I actually found them. And this animal was lucky enough to actually expel it from their body, but quite often these animals can't actually do that, and it will sit in their stomach, they can't digest it, and it leaves no room for the nutrients and the food that they need to survive, and leads to starvation. So for me this is really a tragedy to see this, because it shows that all of these awful things that come with plastic pollution aren't happening far away in some land that's completely ravaged by plastic. It's happening here, now, where we live. So now for the exciting part. I'm going to take apart the poo samples and see what plastics are inside them. So I've been able to separate the poo from the plastic that's inside it. And in the first one, we have this really odd piece of plastic, a black piece of plastic film. But on the other side, it's got what looks like a coating of synthetic plastic fibres. I have absolutely no idea what this is or where it's come from. So if anybody has any clue what this is used for, then please comment it below. But what's worrying about this is that when plastic gets eaten, this shows that some animals are actually able to excrete it. But these synthetic fibres are worrying. Because they're so small, many studies have shown that if synthetic plastic fibres are ingested, then these actually are retained in the gut and can pass into the soft tissues. So this is worrying. But that's not the only bad part. It's been shown that the additives that they use to create plastic products, and also the plastics that absorb horrible chemicals and toxins from the water or the environment that they're in, these can also transfer into the animals that are eating them. And guess what? That stays in the animal, goes up the food chain, and eventually could end up on our dinner plate. So this is really worrying for me to see. This is the first real example that I've seen right in front of me that animals out there are eating the plastics that we are polluting into their environment. I see it all the time on TV and hear it in the news, but this is the first time I've seen it firsthand. And it's really, really frightening. And on the second sample here, we have what looks like a disposable plastic glove. It's very difficult to tell because obviously it's been chewed up into lots of different pieces, but from what I can see, it looks like a disposable plastic glove. So this is really traumatic to see, as I say, this first kind of evidence for me that different kinds of animals are eating the plastics. This isn't restricted to just marine life, but all forms of life are affected by plastic. If that doesn't worry you enough, then as I say, this could very easily be ending up in our food chain and in our bodies. A recent study has found that on average, the average person is eating 5 grams of plastic a week. That's the equivalent of a credit card of plastic. Most of this is coming from the water that we drink, but also the food that we eat. So please, where you can, reduce the amount of plastics that you're using, and absolutely, if you see it, pick it up before any other animals come along and eat it like these unfortunate animals had. Luckily though, they had excreted it, but as I say, the worrying part is what gets left behind in their bodies. So thank you so much for watching this week's Tune In Tuesday, and I'll see you next week for next week's episode.